Okay. Um, and we're live. I was looking for the thing. Hello and welcome to another episode of Loose Canon. This week we are pausing that, muting that. I was actually watching a stream the other day, so I had a little bit of sound overlap there, probably for just a half a second. So this week we are talking about the Shattered Suns lore book, which is a fun one when you know how to read it, and we'll get into that. So have you done the raid?
No, no, no,
So
I haven't
good.
done it yet. No, I've been watching it a lot, and
Hmm.
I definitely have seen what to expect. I probably won't tackle it for a while.
Oh yeah. You just do you just not have like people on when you're on or?
Well, my like I said, my wife and I play mostly together, so it's gonna
Hmm.
take us grinding a little bit more before we're even close to getting in there. I think,
Really?
yeah, I mean, we haven't finished some of the main stuff, so we're still like under leveled and grinding out.
Oh wow.
See, this is the problem with casuals.
Hmm.
Um, it takes a lot longer to get to the point where you can actually be ready.
Hmm.
You know, like we're not even exotic uh, quest mission ready. The
Oh, what Vox Obscura?
Yes,
That thing
yeah,
is brutal though. That's
yeah.
not even like a comparable because of the timer on it. The timer just makes it so hard.
Hmm.
And actually, I think that's a higher. I'm almost positive you need to be higher for the Vox Obscura quest.
Oh, do you? Okay, I
Because
don't know.
if I
All I
remember,
know is that every time we go into any encounter, we're always like, 5 or 10 under,
hmm
and it's
hmm
just everything's really hard. But once we come out of the encounter, we're definitely leveled up to go on to the next thing. But it takes a while. I mean, this one is long. This season,
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot. I can understand why it took people 3, 4, 5 days, the hardcores out there to actually be ready or done with everything.
hmm
Because you get through the main campaign and the story missions, but then there's tons of stuff to do still. I mean, just and then on top of that, you've got the psyops. We do those, so
hmm
it's like I'm trying to digest the lore and trying to do a little bit of everything. Plus, we're just, you know wanted to experience what Gambit was like, wanted to try the new Crucible, wanted to, so it's just like there's a lot.
yeah, yeah. I get you.
So if you're an omni gamer or a casual, you've got to go through a lot before you can even get into the next thing.
Hmm. Well, I hope you get into the raid soon because it is probably my favorite raid. like there,
It looks
like
that
there
way.
there are aspects that like it could be better if things, but like it's just so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Um.
I mean, I've digested all the lore. I've watched, several times people run through the raid
Hmm.
completely. And yeah, I definitely have a good grasp
Yeah.
of what it is and how to complete it. I've watched a couple YouTube videos, stuff like that. But it's funny. It's funny this time around. Uh, Not everyone has like the cookie cutter setup and run through experience. Everybody, even though this one, from what I can tell, this one would be more of like a straightforward raid. Once you know the mechanics, which
Hmm.
seem to be a little bit more basic than past raids, especially like King's Fall, which is
Well,
can
so
be a little bit silly.
like it is. That's what a lot of people were saying. Like when it first came out, they were like, "Wow, this is like really mechanic heavy," and it kind of is mechanic heavy, but it's like one of those. Um, I don't know if I want to say difficult to learn, easy to master.
Yeah, that's probably right. Oh no,
Like
definitely, that's
once
probably
you
right.
know it, you got it. It's you're good. You're
Yeah,
set. And you
yeah.
know, but
It's
like
like
your first
it's
time
like
in there, it's like a lot of like, okay, so now we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do this, and you're like, well, what the fuck is
yeah.
happening?
Absolutely. There you go. That's a perfect example. So, yeah. So what but what my point was is that
Hmm.
every time I've watched people play, everybody has a different way of playing it. It seems it's not like King's Fall. Everybody did the same exact thing, took the same weapons in, and you know,
Man,
this is
that's
where you
crazy.
stand. This is where you stand. No, everybody has like a different. play style because of the weapon diversity and because of the
Hmm.
different subclasses you can use. And now there are so many viable solutions to the end game.
We're only gonna get more. I'm so excited to go back into this raid like next season and the season after when we get Arc 3.0 and Solar
Solar,
3.0.
yeah.
Because like, what's that gonna change? Like, what's that gonna do to this raid?
Break it.
I mean, hopefully, right? That's the goal.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Well, so speaking of the raid, the lore card this week is actually the raid exotic. Do you want to get into that?
Yeah, yeah. So the raid exotic is collective obligation.
Hmm.
It's a really cool gun. Just from what I can tell, I don't have it obviously,
Yeah.
but
A
I've
bunch of
watched a
my
lot of
my
people.
clanmates got it. They did they did it under contest mode, and I think four of them got it on their first completion.
Wow, wow. Well, that's pretty lucky, I guess.
Yeah, that is very lucky.
I haven't come across anybody using it. That's for sure.
Yeah, it it's like a really interesting perk, but I'm not sure if it's a really powerful perk.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if there's something planned for it later, and
Mm,
maybe it's just kind of like, curbed at the moment.
hmm.
I don't know. I
It's
mean,
just
I
like
use the heck out of the Osteo.
yeah. Well, that one's amazing though. Like collective obligation for those who don't know, its perk is basically what it does is like if you shoot it against a target who is like volatile or weakened or suppressed, you can make the gun now shoot that whatever debuff. So like you shoot it against a volatile, now it's got volatile rounds, which is nice, but it isn't it isn't exactly worth exotic in my opinion, where it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm giving up Galahorn or Osteo for this.
No, yeah. It's kind of like one of those, it's cool it does the thing,
Yeah.
but you're not going to trade it out for something that helps you get through the game. It's like it makes the game fun for certain situations, but it doesn't make it easier.
Hmm.
It doesn't give you a easier
Yeah.
or yeah, anyway, a hand
Like
up.
Osteo is practically like overpowered in some
Yeah,
scenarios.
that thing's fun, especially in the Wellspring. Oh, I
Hmm.
love playing with it in there.
And
You
have you
get
gotten
like
the
two or three
catalyst? I don't mean
people
to
doing it.
detract from collective obligation, but have you gotten the catalyst?
Not yet. No, I'm still leveling.
The catalyst makes it so that little burst of poison that you get when you get a kill, if that burst of poison or a poison tick from it kills, it overflows your magazine. So you can
So
end
you
up
just
getting
keep
like a
shooting.
100 magazine osteo and just mow down
Wow.
for like forever because it just keeps replenishing itself.
Yeah. Hey, that's funny. I wondered if that's why they spaced out some of the mechanics in there because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like little bitty clips and pauses in certain encounters where only like three thrall will come out. I wonder if
Yeah.
they knew that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. They're spaced out, and it's like this is a group of three, this is a group of three, this is a group of three, and they're
Yeah.
not near each other at all.
Okay. Anyway, collective obligation is so what this means is it's a group of agents or a group as a whole obliged to achieve a given task. And so like this is where general definitions become like where is this applicable? Well, if you take it in the perspective of the lore and Rolk and the witness and the darkness and all of the entities, um, that kind of entails what they're trying to say is that's the collective obligation. So here's the definition: if it's a group of agents or a group as a whole obliged to achieve a given task, and so this comes into play in ethics. But the problem lies in the moral conundrum of whether to hold responsible the obligations directed to single agents of the group or the collective whole. So, a collective obligation is an obligation directed at a group of agents so that the group as a whole is obliged to achieve a given task. If the group does not have a hierarchical structure, nor do they have an institutionalized representative agent, then it is argued that each individual must be analyzed individually. So this comes into play with, like, say, for instance, you're at an office and you have a team of 10 people tasked with a specific job, or, like, um, an obligation that all of you guys must commit to and fulfill. Well, now, so let's say a non decides to, half-ass it, and he's only going to do like 10% of the work, right?
That sounds like me.
And then, yeah, and then the group is now held accountable for their failures to meet that obligation, right? Well, is a non responsible for that? Is the leader of the group responsible, or is the whole group as a whole responsible? And so this is kind of one of those things where technically you can't just apply the failure to one specific entity, or can you? This is where, like, responsibility and accountability come into place in a lot of things in life, just everywhere. And so, not fulfilling an obligation is a necessary condition for being individually blameworthy. If an individual agent is individually blameworthy, then that person failed to fulfill an obligation. Similarly, not fulfilling a collective obligation is a necessary condition for being collectively blameworthy. If a group is collectively blameworthy, then it failed to fulfill a collective obligation, right? So, in studies, they use diatonic models or formulas that analyze large groups to decipher whether or not to hold accountable individuals or the group as a collective whole. So, in a nutshell, it can be really tricky to, weed out or find specific authorities within groups to hold accountable, and when to use the whole group as a whole accountable, things like that. And so they actually use formulas in business, in huge corporations, even in government, even in war. They use these formulas to find a way to mathematically solve issues that may or may not arise when trying to give out certain tasks. Now, these diatonic models can be used to specify truth conditions and as a way of expressing group actions, abilities, obligations, and their interrelations. An individual obligation is an obligation that an individual should fulfill regardless of the collective obligations of the group. So this is what I was saying earlier, the conundrum of when to hold people accountable. And so there's like these charts that come up where if somebody is going against the group, are they still a part of the group, or are they now somehow segregated from that group's responsibility as a whole, or the collective, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they even have charts of, like, when it comes down to morals, um, you have your environment, your recognized moral issue, or it could be a moral judgment, an established moral intent, or it can just be um, something comes up that is a conflict personally for that individual of that group, right? And so you've got to make a decision. When can you break away from the collective, or when do you act in opposition to the collective? And so that's kind of like what's happening with Rolk and the Witness and the Darkness. The Darkness is a collective, right? And so there are entities that have aligned with the Darkness, and so there are trying. There's like this inside, um, like, not really morality when it comes to the Darkness, but there's this internal conflict that is arising. And so we as guardians, we're a part of a different collective. And so this is when you get into these, what side, or of the problem are you going to be on, and what's the solution, right? So individuals may be forced to either be aligned to the said group or act on their own moral code. However, there is a point at which a decision must be made whether or not to associate collectively as a whole or separate and thereby break free from any responsibility followed by the collective. And instead, you're held accountable as an individual.
Hmm.
So this is where it all kind of culminates. Taking that whole definition aside, the most prominent thing that comes out of this is a thing called collective punishment, and we all know what this is because we all went to school, or most of us did, and we were all in the classroom when Johnny got up and spit a spit wad at the teacher or threw a piece of paper at the back of someone's head, and now the whole class is in trouble, right?
Hmm.
Well, only one kid did it, right? But now the whole class is in trouble, and so we all got to be quiet, and everybody's being punished for the one action, right?
Yeah.
So this happens a lot. So a collective punishment is often used as a disciplinary measure in military units, prisons, psychiatric facilities, private schools, religion, war, etc. But the effectiveness and severity of this disciplinary measure may vary greatly, and it often breeds distrust and isolation among their members. And so I thought it was important to bring that up because there's something which we're going to dive into later. But Savathun and Rolk had a little
Hmm.
moment, and there was a period of like collective punishment, basically, and it bred isolation.
I wonder if, and stop me if this is what you were going to say. I wonder if because with the events of this season, this expansion and everything, it kind of seems like the witness is like, all right, you know what, fuck you guys. Like
Yes.
he's 180'd from his season of arrivals. Oh, you're interesting. Let me get you on my side mentality. And now he's like, I fucking hate the Guardians. So I wonder if because it's really only us that he hates, if like you're saying, collective punishment is like fuck you, fuck all of you because of this one guy in particular.
Well, so and I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm just gonna have to say it. So, spoiler alert: when Rolk dies and his eyes are shown at the end, and you see the six different eyes, and there's two different symbols. And
Hmm.
as somebody pointed out, one of them was the symbol of Eris, and the other one that was pointed out was the symbol of the Exos,
By for
which
anyone wondering, I wish I knew you were going to bring that up. I would have gotten the image
yeah, I didn't know I
ready.
would until just now, but yeah,
The symbol of Eris, he means the celestial body Eris,
yeah,
not like the
like Eris, but it could or could not be a hint.
yeah. I mean it obviously it's obviously something. The question
Yeah,
is, um,
what?
yeah, the question is what. So it should be on screen now. You can see here the top right eye is Eris, and then this one, and I mean, really, the only person who has any right to identify that symbol as Elsie's symbol is you, because you have been on that symbol ever since. God, I don't
God,
even know how
freaking
long.
Iron Lords.
Yeah, you
Because I was like, why does Shiro have this emblem, and why does
yeah,
yeah yeah. So
and
that's so that emblem has to do with the Exos. It's widely used to signify anybody who is an Exo for the most part, um, or that kind of stuff. So, like some people quickly were like, "Oh, that's the symbol of Elsie Bray." Well, yeah, or that's the symbol of Anna Bray. Oh, well, yeah, or Clovis Bray, or yeah, well, it's
yeah,
Exos. I
and
mean, it could
and
be anybody affiliated with the creation or as an entity, an Exo. So it could be anything. Um,
I
and yeah,
I think if I had to place a bet on what this was, I would say that that symbol in particular would be Clovis because Clovis had like direct. If anything, Clovis was the one who had potential of becoming a disciple, right? Like
yeah, Yeah, so there you go. So there's the thing that, this kind of points to is what does that mean specifically? Well, it could mean that certain entities have aligned with the darkness, and it's kind of like a kill. It's like almost like a kill strike, or what do you call it? A kill notch. When you
Hmm.
have one down, two down, what are the next five going to be? Or what are the next four going to be? It's like as he's going through, we're the thorn in his side,
Yeah.
the witness. And so the witness was like, well, I got these, I got this one, I got this one, but I can't get you guys. Fuck you guys.
Yeah, it seems weird though. Like I agree it means something. I think it's very hard to say with any certainty what it could mean
Sure.
because this is Rolk in the first place. It's not like it's something on the pyramid. This is Rolk's
Roll.
person. His eyes are glowing. Four of them are glowing a nonsense symbol, I guess, and two of
Yeah.
them are glowing one symbol which has never been associated but can potentially stand for Eris, and one symbol which is definitively Clovis Bray.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Rolk
exactly.
had no interactions with Clovis because Rolk has always, and I mean, we're not going to cover it today, but for Rolk's more recent times, he has always been with Savathun.
Yeah. And so this is why I brought this up, because collective obligation, when you read through it, it's kind of boring and it can be really heady, right? So when you're listening to me drone on about all the different collective obligation, what does that mean? You know, it kind of like, it makes a lot of people glaze over, and the back of their mind is like, what? Well, this is where it culminates. So these are all the entities that are related to the darkness, and Rolk as an entity, or Rolk as the raid boss,
Mhm.
uh, he was a part of that, that infighting, but he was also a part of that, you know, that hammer or that judgment that came down on us in the raid. Um, and horse kicks us all over the freaking map, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
there's some
Rolk
weird stuff going in there, man.
Rolk not being just another static raid boss was probably one of my favorite things.
Yeah,
Because it was just like
that was a
everyone
good one.
spread out, and with my raid team we had one guy who was basically always trying to keep his attention, and he kept I was just standing where I was standing and he kept leading him to me, or the boss kept turning to me, and everyone's like, why are you getting in his way? And I'm like, it's not my
Yeah,
fault. Like it's not like he only goes to one place and I'm in that place. I'm in a
mm,
different place. He just turns to me. Like
yeah,
I'm doing
yeah. It's
everything I
funny.
can.
There's so many little things that throughout the campaign, which were all little hints to what was going to end up being in the raid.
Hmm.
Like the statues,
Yeah.
and
Rourke's
yeah, and then
legs we saw.
yeah, and even the mechanics, like certain mechanics you use as you're leveling up through the missions, become mechanics in the raid. Stuff like that. It's really
Oh,
cool how they set this up. The whole time you're like, what are these statues of just legs? What are these statues of just horses? What is this repeating thing that we're seeing throughout? And then all of a sudden you get into the raid and you're like, oh, there it is.
yeah. All right. So I have two more images that I'm gonna put up. First one I'm gonna put up is a I guess a set piece you could call it in the raid. I forget exactly where this is. Um, but this also vaguely not vaguely. This is also mm, basically what the lore book cover is. Specifically the color wheel on the top, and then
Yeah.
the symbol on the right with what looks like a glaive going through it. But so I kind of wanted to break this down because I was looking at it the other day and I noticed some things like you have this color wheel at the top clearly representing the light because the symbol in the raid of light is one with like an explosion of color. And so in the center, that should be the planet which shares its name with the city, Lubre. And you have driven between it, you have like the abyss, which is a feature of Lubre, as we'll cover in the book. And then on the bottom, you have your pyramid, and then to the left and to the right, you have its two suns. Because Lubre
Yeah,
is a planet with two suns, one which was
binding.
called Saphiric and one which was called Umbral. And you can even see them shining down onto the planet. Like one is shown in darkness and one is shown in light. Well, all this was before the Traveler even arrived. The Traveler came to this planet and just, fucked everything up for them. Uh, and
We
so
called
this,
that terraforming here in Soul System.
well, so we'll get into it, but it sounds like
Yeah,
the Traveler did more harm than good for the society itself because not everybody was buying into what the Traveler was selling.
yeah,
Um, and then so the second image I wanted to show, or I guess the third image now, the second one I wanted to show though was if you do not have this lore book, you get 5 entries. I'm not sure if you get more for doing it again, but in the preservation mission at the very end, there are 5 little pedestals that you can go around to, and you can
yeah.
get 5 entries.
Yeah.
The way to get the other entries is very simple, but a little confusing. So this image is going to be on screen now, and I just want to have it in front of me, so there's a little bit of a delay. So before you go to that like big open area, you have that room with all the symbols on the pillars. And there's a secret room off to the right. You enter the room off to the right. There's a secret room where you'll find a wall that looks very much like this, but is ultimately a little different. So you work from
Yeah, and
top to bottom.
it has all the symbols, which are the call outs.
Yeah. And so you work
Yeah.
from top to bottom. Um, each section on the top is Guardian. That just means you. So you can effectively ignore that top row. The second row tells you what to do. So that little blood drop looking symbol that's called enter, that means to
Pants.
melee. The third one, the pyramid with the green coming out, that's commune. That means activate. And the fourth one, the circle with the spear going through it, that means kill, and that means to shoot it with your gun. So basically, what you do to get more entries of this lore book is you melee the earth symbol, melee the enter symbol, activate the witch queen symbol, kill the tower symbol, and then go back to the earth and do that one more time, which is melee the earth symbol.
Hmm.
Uh, it won't be those for you. This is just what it is for this image that I grabbed. Yours will be different. Just do what it says. And now, so normally you can only do that once a week in preservation, but the preservation mission up to that room is exactly the same as the raid, including the fact that you can respawn as much as you like. So go in the raid. It'll be a little tough because it's going to have more enemies. It'll take you a little longer to get to this room, but then you can go to this room, input the symbols, wipe, and do it again instead of having to replay the entire preservation mission.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Or waiting
Neat.
week for week. And it's even faster if you have 2 people because then you have people to share it with. It's just like, okay, go
Yeah,
do this, go do this, go do this.
right
And you
on.
can get on with it. Okay.
So you got the lore books.
Yeah, so that's how you get the lore book, and that's what we're talking about today. So we were originally going to try to talk about everything, but I actually have 27 pages of Rolk lore, and that's way too much for a single episode. And the lore book stands pretty well alone. There is one issue with the lore book, though. It can be confusing if you don't know how to read it. So when you're reading the lore book, if you plan to actually like read it all yourself, because we don't go through everything here, you'll find basically 3 syntaxes of how the line is presented. One where it is just a regular sentence, capital, nothing fancy on it. Another where it's in between parentheses, and the third one when it's between the M dashes. When it is just normal, that is Rolk talking to himself, to the witness, talking however, in the present. When it's in parentheses, that is observations and potentially conversations in the past being seen as a vision given to Rolk by the witness. And when it's in the M dashes, that is the witness speaking, usually always to Rolk. I don't think there's actually an instance where it's not, where the witness isn't talking to Rolk, but just understand, in M dashes is the witness speaking. So sorry, that was a lot, but I feel it's important to know how to read this
To
book,
read
because
it,
when I
yeah,
first read
it'll
it,
save you a lot of time, yeah,
yeah,
if you're reading it. Because when I first read it, I was like, "What the fuck?" I was
same.
just like, "I have no idea what the hell they're talking about. I don't know what the heck is going on." I mean,
Hmm.
I finally understood, but I still didn't have a key grasp as to what was going on when they were talking. So this will save you a lot of time if you're reading it for the first time to know like what's going on. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of like one of those things where you wish they would have like put a little key somewhere in the
Hmm.
lore.
And those past visions that you get, they're not in order either. It's not like he goes all the way back to the beginning and he's remembering forward. They kind of jump around.
Yeah,
Like for example, it starts out with him saying, "What have I done?" and then past vision, noise, 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 noise. And then he says, "Fear how mothers did, sadness it, fathers come, hate to children, this sorrow forgive, displeasure me." And then the vision of chaos, Lubre convulses, the sky shatters. And so like that's the end of what's actually happening. But then he goes back to the beginning of what's happening, like his whole journey, and even later on he goes back even further of what's happening, like from even further to the beginning, before the beginning. It's
yeah.
it is a lot um to handle. It is a little confusing. So now that we're here, let's talk about it, right?
Yeah, let's dive into it.
So
What happened?
so as I said, the lore book is all about Rolk being given visions. He Lubre has been destroyed by him. You don't know how it's been destroyed yet, but you can basically understand that Rolk is speaking with the witness, and the witness is giving him visions of his past. And so the first one, it's like he says, "Our city, an abyss surrounds, Lubrain made infinite, or just empty, divides silently, conquers. Ignorant contentment, love, I was cared for. My clan's safety, dual fire in the sky, blue light, salvation, dark light, death. Safety, my clan, my family." And then the witness speaking, "And who cares for you now? There are none left. Do you still desire it? Once I did once, and you returned it." And so it's very hard to read like out loud. So I'm just gonna try to like kind of summarize everything that's happening. Basically, Rolk lived with his clan. The Lubre was divided into two factions: the Wanderers and the Regime, who lived in the city. The Regime would send out groups of not guards, stalkers, who would come out and just basically kill Wanderers, like with no
Yeah,
discretion. It's like, if you're not part of the regime, you deserve to die, and that's the end of that.
yeah,
And so Rolk lived in a clan with his mother, his father, his clan mother, clan father, sister, and his father kind of stops him. My anger flares. I move to confront the stalkers. Father's hand holds me back. We lock eyes. His communicates sympathy, pain, regret. He won't let me reach the wanderers. Their blood spills. A lesson and an action. Father wants me to see what he's seen, to feel the powerlessness he's felt, to feel insignificant, to accept the status quo. And the witness says, "You were never capable of returning it." So basically, like right off the bat, Rolk has a lot of like anger in him, and his father kind of holds him back
yeah.
from defending his own people.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, as we said earlier, they had their two sons. That was always a thing. But at one point, the traveler did come, and that was kind of when things went wrong by the sounds of it. I mean, Rolk wasn't alive when the traveler came, but so he in his vision long ago there were only wanderers surviving a harsh landscape covered with shifting bloodthirsty flora. Surviving wildlife can flatten themselves until they are practically invisible, perfect at going unnoticed until they split your skin and organs apart. We are divided, split by a shimmering orb that appeared briefly in our sky, as if having two suns isn't already crowded enough. And the witness is saying, "What of this shimmering orb?" And Rolk replies, "It was before my time. It came, we evolved, it left. Left us with a mess. Those who believed in good progress, those who didn't. Those who believed in the city, dwelled in the city, controlled it, filled it with only light of the sapphiric sun, and endless days to keep the horrors of night away, revealing the horrors among us. They pushed progress for the sake of the few, while the rest of us took our chances under the alternating suns." Um, so this is kind of like a unique issue. Normally, when we think of the Traveler, we think of all the good it does, but this one did not in that
Right.
way.
Yeah. He made a mess when he got to their area where they were kind of living in this yin and yang environment, which
Yeah,
was just back and
and
forth.
everyone was. It wasn't just like
Yeah.
some people were.
Yeah. The whole thing was uh, so so Rolk so Rolk being born under daddy who holds him back and then feeling this, this sense of, well, my protectors can't act because they're
Hmm.
held bound. Like they're bound by whatever it is. And it's, a lot of it has to do with fear and evolution and not being able to arise to the occasion of when to, sacrifice oneself to the to the change that is necessary. And I'm trying to be real careful not to use good or bad because that has nothing to do with it. This is like
Hmm.
survival.
Yeah, and it's not even in the next entry in Endangered. You actually kind of get to see that when Rolk finally does say, "This is enough. I'm defending my people." Like I'm not. It's not like he wants to kill anyone. It's
Yeah.
that they're killing literally his family, and he's just like, "I
Yeah.
just want to stop them from killing my family."
Yeah.
And so he does, and basically he starts killing them. I am covered in red, it's all I see. It spills out of these stalkers like an endless crimson wave as I face them. Their valuables and instruments become mine, a glaive of my own, a sapphic converter. Father is carried off, not killed, not yet anyway. Not many of us are left. Mother and the others look at me with concern, not for my injuries, but for those who suffered at my hands. And
Mm.
then of course the witness is like, they disrespected your power. Like, oh, I gotta get in there. I
Yeah.
gotta curate what I want from you.
Yeah.
And Roke replies, they were weak, and the witness says, and yet you still saved them when you could. Which, it's like, yeah, you weren't wrong. You were right to
Yeah.
save them, and
You
that's
were
that's how it
merciful.
starts.
Yeah.
The
Look how
stalkers attack
benevolent
us.
you are.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying the witness is always like in the back of his mind, like, look how benevolent you are. Look how you're merciful, and look how you just save those that need the saving. And it's good. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
good. Keep going.
But see, and that's what I mean though. That's how it starts. He's saying they disrespected your power, and then
Yeah.
when Rourke says that they were weak, the witness says, and yet you saved them when you could, and that's what it says now. But later on, it's like, oh, their weakness made you weak. Like you can't allow their weakness to exist. His
Right.
tune shifts a bit when Rourke goes a little further down. Um,
Yeah.
and so he wants Rourke wants to protect his people, but they're kind of scared of him now, and I think it's a little bit justified. later on because
Yeah.
uh he sees another vision. I'm a boy. I hold the furry little yacht in my hand. It wriggles before pulling it apart. It separates from its skin with ease. What is this worthless, pointless thing? And this worthless, pointless thing, it dies so unceremoniously. Did it ever matter at all? The children who weep for their lost pet. The children weep for their lost pet, but I feel powerful. I feel, and
Serial
Mother and the
killer.
others look at me with concern, not for my injuries, but for those who suffered at my hands. They are right to do so. Tearing their bodies to pieces brought only joy. What am I? And the
Serial killer.
well, so Rolk says, "I'm a monster. I knew it then. I know it now." And the witness is like, "You're not a monster. You're a savior." Like, really gotta get in his head. Really fuck with him.
Yeah, double down on that.
Yeah. And so, Rolk was effectively exiled because of that. He was seen as a liability,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's unfair, to be completely honest.
But you know that what does that do? That only compounded the issue.
I mean, it did. You're absolutely right. It's one of those things where it's like we kind of saw it last week with Saladin's cutscene from the psyops.
Yeah.
He saves that little girl and
Yeah.
kills the bad guys, and then he goes back to the city and the village, and the village is destroyed, and it turns out that little girl was a bad guy all along.
You know, that's perfect. Like that's like a little yeah, that's perfect. I didn't even think about the parallelism with those two. Like they're really good about making parallel stories in game that kind of like tell you a summary or synopsis what's happening on the bigger picture story arc. It's kind of
Hmm.
like what they did. It's kind of like what they did when Achilles weaves
Cocoon.
uh, Cocoon, but it was a parallel story of feeling, worthless. What is my purpose?
Hmm.
And then now I can, weave cocoons. I can weave cloth. I can weave egg cloth. And then also you had a parallel story with, um, what's her name? Oh my God,
Ada.
Ada one. Yeah, feeling worthless. What is
Hmm.
my duty now that I no longer am a forge or forge for weapons and stuff? What do I do? Well, now I can make this cloth and spin and weave this stuff. So Bungie loves to do parallel stories in game. So this, very much just like you pointed out, is similar to that whole, oh, I saved you, but you became the monster, and when when and where, it's that whole responsible trolley problem, all of the things that come up in different instances. But like so Rex Rolk was exiled, right?
Yeah, Rolk was exiled, and so he was
Because he
kind
was a
of
monster.
yeah.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily make it better. Like you
No,
can't just imprison people when they're bad. They need to be rehabilitated or brought back to whatever's wrong with them needs to be addressed and helped. And that's the pitfall, right?
yeah, because I mean, they already live in a harsh environment. They basically said like, you're a liability, so go live out there on your own. In the back of their minds, they're probably hoping that he'll just die alone, but he
Yeah.
doesn't. So
Yeah, problems don't go away. They're always there and they will
yeah,
always come back. You can't just say, "Oh, let's just put it aside or forget about it," because eventually it's always going to get you in the end. And Rolk was that problem,
hmm.
that thing. There was something wrong with him that needed help, and ultimately the monster came back.
And I mean, all of this happened with seemingly, at the very least, without the witness's influence. It wasn't until the very end that the witness actually came in. It was like
Yeah,
he was very not there, not present, maybe observing from afar, seeing what Rolk could do before deciding to step in.
yeah.
But yeah. So Rolk was exiled, and so every umbral sun, basically the sun that shone darkness, which so fucking People might remember a while ago. How many, like, that was like months ago, wasn't it? The
Which part?
darkness through prism that you brought up.
Oh yeah, that was forever ago. It was
Yeah,
like 2 years ago
it
or a
was not
year
two
and a
years
half
ago.
ago. Yeah, it feels like it.
Well, actually, I know how to.
Yeah, we had this discussion about light through a prism, and then you and I were discussing about, well, is there an opposite to that? And yes, there is. In science, there is a dark prism. There is the reverse of a prism, which scatters light, and so you have the different colors that come out of the prism. That's what we were analyzing, like what is representative of the light as far as energies and that stuff, and then what would be representative of the dark. That was before we got stasis. So
Mhm.
yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, no, it was like a year and a half ago. But yeah, it was before Beyond Light, because then the winnower said, "Now you may speak of the deep, the beautiful final color. You will be the king of the colors,
yeah,
and you will learn all the
yeah.
secrets of your destiny." Oh wait, no, that's just something I was memeing. Um, I forgot what made us fucking think of that.
It was we were talking I think we were talking about a weapon that had to do with like prisms and light, but then we were trying to like analyze what is going to be what we were trying to understand what was going to end up being the darkness subclasses
Hmm.
as if we were like relating them to what is the opposite of the light subclasses, because you had the three different colors of the spectrums of light, three basic colors of the spectrums of light when cast through a prism. So white, all colors together, is the white light you see, and then cast through a prism, a triangle, a prism, you get a scattering, right? And so you get the three colors that are basically present on your TV screen when you're watching TV. Those are the light colors that make up all the colors. I'm trying to not make this crazy, but it's too late. Loose cannon. Here we go. So arc is blue, solar is orangey red, and purpley, magenta, right? Those are the three
Yeah.
colors cast through the light spectrum. So we were trying to figure out, well, is there is there an opposite? Can you cast dark through a light prism? Yes, in science there very much is. And so that's where we analyzed that, and we were trying to come up with, well, what would be the opposite? And so you just get the scatterings are completely different. And where they bleed to make true dark, you get different colors. You get the green. You get some weird other color. I can't remember right now, but um,
Yeah.
that's when we were talking about like the hiviness and
We were talking about we must have been talking about someone named Goeth.
yes, Goth. That's
Okay.
the yeah, that's the well respected uh, you know fundamental guy that wrote the thing about it basically.
Yeah, because I have this here. Unlike his contemporaries, Goethe didn't see darkness as an absence of light, but rather as polar to and interacting with light. Color
Yeah.
resulted from this interaction of light and shadow. For Goethe, light is the simplest, most undivided, most homogeneous being that we know. Confronting it is the darkness, which is so crazily like identical to the Destiny
Yeah.
pitch.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's that's definitely where we were going with that. Yeah, so I try so hard not to go too heady with this stuff, but basically, philosophers and scientists of yore, the old guys back when would often try to come up with rationalizations and proofs of reality as to why things exist and why things are the way they are. And so Goethe was onto something. He was very much trying to explain, the fundamentals of light and
Mm.
the origin of those things. And so his postulation was that to go against light is like darkness, basically.
Mhm. All I remember is that, and it's so funny that we have this is that I found a GIF of dark shown through a prism, and I tweeted about it after talking about it. Like, we have light shown through a prism, and then also dark shown through a prism. And then with this raid, we have, and I'll put it back up. We have this color wheel, and then this dark color wheel, and
Yeah.
it's. I saw the images for the raid, and I just immediately like retweeted that tweet from 2 years ago, and I was like, yeah, look, we were right all along. Like, we had no idea that this was gonna be a thing, but it's just so fun to like kind of scratch the surface on what Bungie's mind is. It's like they have much more than we are understanding in mind, but we're just kind of like right there. Like, are you here?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, Goth, the cool thing about Goth and why we were onto something is because when you think about like light as a whole, so this all relates to the theory of colors. I'm not going to get into because they'll kill everybody trying to listen to this podcast. Um, but in a nutshell, you have your standard RGBs,
Mm-hmm.
your red, green, blue, and then you have your um, oh, what is it? The cyan, magenta, and
Yellow.
yellow. Yeah, and so those are, if I can remember correctly from art, those are your subtractive and additive ways of mixing colors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you see when you're painting a painting, you're seeing the color that is visible. The rest are absorbed by the environment. So this is where it kind of gets heady. So you're not seeing all the colors that make up the material that you're using. You're only seeing the one that is reflected back to your eye that your brain can make sense of. Okay. And so, just like a prism, when you take focused light and spread it through a prism, it comes out and flays into the different colors. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you simulate them back together, their nexus points, those three colors on both sides of either light or dark, those nexus points will make true white or true dark, true light or true black. That's the point of it. So where they blend, you also get what could be representative of the three subclasses, and now we have a fourth. So it's just interesting to think of color and light theory as being a part of the whole uh, light versus dark, because a prism, triangular shape, darkness, right? They come in
Mm-hmm.
pyramid shapes. Light, the representative of the light would be the traveler, a round shape, which is often depicted as like your center light, your focus light.
Your
Anyway,
color wheel.
your color wheel, yeah, exactly. And so color wheel is a whole nother thing because you have opposites. You have your primary colors and then your secondary colors, and those are really the only two that you should really concern yourself with. And everywhere your primary colors have an opposite. So like purple's opposite would be yellow. All right. Blue's opposite would be green,
Orange.
orange. And then yeah, exactly. And then your opposite of red would be green. So where they blend, you get hues of color. Yeah, just interesting.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
they get all these inspirations from real world stuff.
so then, to go back to the book, Rolk was basically cast out of his clan because he was a
Yeah,
liability, he was too dangerous to have, and he's got this glaive now that he got from the regime, and he's decided to name it Relic's Ward. Relic is being his father's name, and he plans on avenging, if not saving, his father, not holding back, not being afraid to kill the regime. And that doesn't last long because as he's walking out under an umbral sun, he finds his father hanging out with some stalkers of the regime. And now, as you stand before me, draped in the insignias of the very regime that took you, I am confident that you have no answers. As you call your fellow stalkers to overwhelm me, to bind me, to carry me into the dense, unending city of Lubre, I am confident that you are a coward. As you testify at my trial that I should not be put to death for what the regime claims are immeasurable crimes, but should instead serve alongside the stalkers, alongside you, killing wanderers, annihilating clans, I am confident that you are an opportunist. What about Mother, our clan? What about down with the regime? What about biding our time? Or is this another lesson in inaction? And sparing ourselves from the absolute worst so that we can barely live, barely survive? I am confident, Father, you will die by my hand.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so he,
because he's going against the his inaction or his impotence to act is going against what Rolk
yeah,
is feeling
like
is
Rourke is
necessary.
very anti-regime, and he thought his father was anti-regime despite having like inaction, a sense of
Yeah,
inaction. And oh, look at
but
that! His father got kidnapped by the regime and decided to join up and start killing the people he used
yeah,
to be.
and so sadly, his father, probably from his perspective, is doing what he thinks he can do to protect his family. Because he has a responsibility as as the family hierarch that is in charge of keeping them safe and alive and surviving. And so he's doing what's immediately or what he thinks is best in his mind.
Yeah,
But Rolk sees it as weakness and ultimately doom,
because I mean,
which
with
he's
Relic,
not completely wrong.
with Relic being a stalker, that does mean that he has to kill other wanderers. But as
Yeah,
we see with when he encounters his own son, instead of killing his son, he's like, all right, let's bring him into the city, put him on trial, and he's safe. He's with me. I protected my
yeah,
son.
yeah. So there
And
was an ulterior motive.
yeah. And then we move on. And so Rolk values the regime's honesty, even if they're brutal. They've always been upfront about it. And as we just saw, he now hates his father for his lies and his weakness. So
Yeah,
Rolk has basically become a stalker, and it's like, okay, the regime is like, yeah, go kill people. You have a bloodlust, and we're gonna feed that to you. And the witness is capitalizing on what they're learning about Rolk, valuing honesty, even if it's honesty of I'm not a good person. Like we're
yeah.
doing bad things.
Brutal honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Rolk also renames his glaive from Relic's Ward to Relic's Bane because now he absolutely plans on killing his father.
It's kind of like dad is like, you may not know why I'm doing the things now, but one day maybe you will. And he's hoping for it. But just like, a lot of father son uh, issues that, it comes up as a trope in a lot of different movies and stories. Rourke is like blinded by his own ambition, I guess, in a way. And so he's refusing to. I always think of Star Wars. I always think of like um, Vader, Darth Vader, and how he was just being mentored by Obi-Wan, and there's that famous scene, "You were the chosen one," that kind of thing, and so a lot of these tropes come up where like you don't understand why we
Yeah.
walk the path we walk, but I'm hoping that you will, and I'm allowing you enough rope to either climb back up this mountain or hang yourself
Mm-hmm.
because it's ultimately up to you to make the choice that writes your true destiny in life. You can only give people so much, but daddy needed to address some issues with son, and he didn't.
Yeah. That entry actually ends with Rolk kind of seeing the good that the regime offers as well. Rolk is very malleable. The city may
Hmm.
be overcrowded, the laws may be strict, the few may have all the power, but at least we're not out there trying fruitlessly to survive. At least we're not out there scared, cold, and alone, wondering if we'll live to see the next rise of either sun.
Yeah.
Rolk then tries to kill his father, and He said he has the vision of, how dare you stand before me now and confess your disloyalty to the regime? How dare you lie to me again? You may have overwhelmed me this time, escaped my grasp, but I am coming for you. I will end this. Then
Just mad.
yeah, he's very unhappy with his father, and so
Yeah,
we're getting to the point. It's like really accelerating now. This is Rolk, like the dominoes have already been tipping over, but this is where they're about to like knock over that like row of 20,
yeah. The
where
point of no
they all
return.
cascade at the same time and just take out hundreds in a minute. So Rolk doesn't wish to experience the destruction of Lubre a second time. The witness calls it one of its greatest moments. Um, And so he's Rolk saying stop. The witness is saying why, and he says, I don't want to do this. I don't want to relive this. The witness says most would die for the opportunity to retread their greatest moments. And Rolk says great moments end in triumph, not mass extinction. In the end, what mattered. And so this is like the witness is like really trying to like solidify. It's okay that you commit a mass extinction of your own people. Like that's fine. That's a good thing, in fact, and trying to like now twist him into the witness logic. And so the witness is saying things like the end, no, no, we are so very far from the end. You are not ready for a taste of true glory. You may not yet be familiar with the concept of metamorphosis, but we assure you, you are experiencing it right now. You were once free to roam your little box, but lacked wings to fly out of it, and so you grew them, the little larva that you were, wrapped in a cocoon. Now, you need only to cut yourself from it, but to do so, you must leave behind that which made you weak, retaining only that which makes you strong. And Rourke saying like, but my world, and then seeing visions of it being shattered, and the witness says, recreated here for you. And now Rourke is getting a vision of it reformed all around him, and the witness says every painstaking detail, and Rourke seeing the suns, the abyss, the regime, all of Lubre, and the witness says every painful memory. And Rourke is seeing his clan, his family, Cloa, clan leader, Kisa, clan mother, Kita, sister, Vruna, mother, relic, father, their heads in his hands. Like these are all visions just like flashing by.
yeah.
Technically, and this is what we said earlier, the visions don't run linear. These visions happen at the very end. We're still kind of in the middle of where the vision timeline is supposed to be. And that's why this can get confusing. And the witness
Oof.
caps it off by saying, love for them made you weak. Power over them made you strong. Upon reflection, you are filled with regret, believing yourself to be under the spell of the regime, believing your actions and their tenure to be wrong. But morality, oh dear Rolk, is subjective. And now you are all that remains of Lubre. Isn't it time you made the rules? Isn't it time you looked back upon your life with pride? After all, your actions brought you to us, and actually, and only we can help you emerge from your cocoon. We, what even are you? We are your salvation, we are your judgment, and soon we will be your witness. So that's
uh,
kind of what we heard back in
yeah,
Shadowkeep.
yeah. The unpacking.
But when I was rereading it here this morning, it clicked for me. We see the witness at the end of The Witch Queen. And the witness is a singular entity, but back then and now, the witness says, we are, we are, only we can, us, you are brought to us, very
Yeah,
plural words.
yeah.
So, what does that mean that the witness is?
I think he's just a representative of the collective. Like he's a what is the word? He is a physical representation of the collective darkness.
So,
I mean, think about like his like the imagery of the witness and all the heads coming out of his smoky brain and the formless mass that he's been described as, and
Mhm.
then just uh, yeah,
So let me tell you something that you might not have seen. I think it was 2 weeks ago now in the Ishtar Discord. Someone actually said they think that the witness is basically a homunculi formed of an entire civilization of people, and that's the
ooh,
heads
that's
flowing out of his
cool.
head. And
Yeah,
so here's the real kicker with that. Remember back in the Presage mission,
yeah,
the debuff that we would get was called egregor.
yeah,
Egregor is an occult concept representing a distinct non-physical entity that arises from a collective group of people.
yeah,
So
yeah. Sure is.
it kind of
Okay.
flows with this idea that though the witness is a singular entity, they're actually many entities in one. Kind of
Yeah.
like, and I had an example, but I can't think of it now.
Well, the homunculi is a kind of a good one.
No, like an example from a media where it was like
Oh,
a single body hosting, like Venom. There we go. There's a good one for you.
oh yeah, the symbiote.
Yeah. Venom is not a Venom is a singular entity of many entities.
Yeah, like two, the symbiote and the host.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, yeah. I guess. Well, in a nutshell, I guess you could describe the hive that way too, or even the Vex are kind of like the Vex are more like that. The
I,
Vex are just not removed though. Like they don't have like they're all just one mind.
they're
The hive are
not.
more like
The
multiple
Vex are
minds.
not one mind.
But they're divided from one central thing. Does that make sense?
I don't think that they are.
Vex aren't derived of.
The Vex
Anyway,
are
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's kind of like the hive have their worm, and they share that thing with the worm god, and the worm god is at the entity. However, the processes in the mind and the formatting doesn't all trickle down from one. They're all pretty much responsible for their own uh, existence, and whether or not they can survive is up to themselves. The Vex are like very much just of one central mind. They might, yeah, they break off and they have sub minds and all these other massive minds that can grow and divide themselves, but at the end of the day, they all come from one central origin point. Unlike the hive, which shared their bodies with the worm, the worm pact, and it all trickled down from the worm gods, which them themselves were divided. So the
but
darkness is
no,
probably, if you think
so
of them, yeah,
okay, here it is, here it is. Is this it? The pathways lie dull against the granite, no power runs through them, not since the heart stopped beating, but the Vex of the soul divisive have programmed themselves to worship the darkness. Or somewhere still always happening. This is gonna bug me. There the Vex the Vex are a collective group of individuals who are like 100% aligned in the betterment and the advancement of their kind, but they are still individuals because as in protective, corrective, whatever, Virgo prohibition, every subgroup of Vex that we know is like we don't like those guys talking about the soul divisive. Like they are not a fan of the soul divisive at all.
yeah. Well, I would say that this is where it gets like there's no. We could go on with this forever, but so my point is the Vex are like a mathematic problem, and then you have a solution to the mathematic problem, and then you keep writing that solution to the mathematic problem until you say, "Oh wait, no, that's not the solution to the mathematic
I
problem.
got it.
Let's make another solution." Okay, now this solution is getting this far, and then they're like, "Oh crap, we hit a wall. That's not the solution to the mathematic problem." Now we make another solution to the mathematic problem. So all of the solutions still exist until they hit that wall of where they're just still trying to prove the problem of that original mathematic problem. However, they all stem from the same mathematic problem. And so all the VEX are trying to prove their mathematic solution. And so, of course, each solution is not going to want the other solutions to exist because they think they're the end result. They think they are that finite problem solving solution.
I agree with everything you're saying right there, but I think what you're saying is in favor of my point that the Vex are individuals and not a singular mind. Even
Oh,
though,
I mean, I think they all. Well, sure, sure. Let's go with that. But what I'm trying to say, I guess, is we're both saying the same thing. So
okay,
what I'm trying to say is
you're saying it
they all,
differently than I am.
yeah,
Okay.
they all stem from one origin point, but they
Yes.
all
I mean,
share
so
the
do
same
humans.
code. They all share the same code, but they're all unlike humans. They're all trying to do the same thing.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I completely agree there.
Yeah.
They all have that like central
Yeah, they're trying to
directive.
rewrite the universe until it's a perfect solution,
Yeah.
which
But
is crazy, but
I found
therein lies the issue.
where I found what I was trying to find before. He watches the movements of the Vex. He learns to tell them apart: the shining silver ones, the brass ones with black back-swept horns, the ones with eyes glowing white. Occasionally, scattered among them are pockets of Vex, stained with verdigris, their arms trailing
Yeah,
shawls of moss. All the other Vex keep away from those ones. Twice, he's seen other Vex fight the mossy ones. It looks like the other Vex are frightened of them as much as Vex can be. So, like, they're almost like at odds with Soul Divisive, is my point. Like, yes, they all have a singular directive that they're all performing, but one group has taken it to such a far-reaching point that they're actually starting to be like, okay, maybe we don't want that directive, even if it is right.
yeah,
Maybe we
yeah,
don't want it to be.
yeah. Well, it's like what we saw at the very beginning of everything with them worshiping the black heart
Well,
of the
that's the Soul
darkness.
Divisive. That's what they were
Yeah.
doing.
So that's exactly that. That's the manipulation and power that the darkness has over the universe to the point of even being able to subjugate Vex, which are very much just a
Yeah.
you would almost see the Vex as like just just indiscriminately soulless machiniforms that just want to terraform everything into the perfect shape that is their you know thing.
Yeah.
So that's what's wild about the darkness is how powerful it is to even the most like basic vessel can be manipulated and used by the darkness to the most complex. And I mean, we as guardians are just, I guess, the biggest um problem for the universe to solve. um
Guardians are
anyway,
fucking, and I love that. I feel like the only reason why Guardians are such a problem is because Guardians are directly mirrored of the player base. So they
yeah,
have such a detached sense of reality because of that,
yeah,
because Bungie's leaned into it, they're like, no, but the Guardians are actually the players. And because of that, they're just like so twisted. And it's if they were writing a completely scripted on rail story and ignored us as a player in the game,
Yeah,
Guardians would probably be more noble and good, but
sure.
we suck. So the Guardians also kind of suck.
Maybe they learned that from their past games because their past games were very much like there was the protagonist, and then you
Yeah.
stepped into the protagonist, and you got to ride that wave of this is the hero going through the
Hmm.
story. You know,
This is a the game influences us, we influence the game. It's like a back
the
and
game.
forth
Yes,
thing.
yes, yes. Perfect. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah. Because
So so I so like here we are, Rolk. I'm trying to, I'm trying to kind of get a concept out of this whole thing with Rolk. So like here we are. Okay, so we got 15 minutes. So here we are with Rolk.
yeah, we got a few more entries.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just wait. Go ahead.
Okay. So we're in the entry Tainted, and so this one's really interesting because this one goes back even further in the past with its visions. The witness says, "Your father, he feared your anger, he feared you," and Rolk says, "Because he knew what I could become, he knew what burdens flowed through my veins. He felt them. He too felt them, lived them." And he sees the vision. I am a boy. My father skewers three stalkers in front of me. His eyes are crimson, his sharpened teeth bared as he moves to bite their heads off. And then speaking to the witness again, for a time my father embodied what I felt inside. I looked up to him, believed I could confide in him. He felt a bloodlust and despised the regime. But as they did with me, the others began to see him as a liability, so he softened and softened until, in my opinion, he degraded to the Libraean equivalent of fetid rot. And then he once again shoots forward into the future with his vision. I stare into the face of my father, his severed, shattered head held in my hand, dripping with what once stayed within. This has not happened yet in the linear visions
Yeah.
that we have seen so far. This is after the linear visions. A lot of back and forths with these for like context. And so Rolk is trying to meet that end. He is hunting down his father, and uh, they left in a hurry. All who he finds evidence of his father in his clan's most recent hiding space, but it's devoid of active life, as were the rest, but filled with tokens, trinkets, heirlooms. They left in a hurry, all who remained, and I know where desperation takes them, the same place it took me, the abyss.
Yeah.
And so as I said earlier with the big banner image, you can kind of see, at least I think that's what it's supposed to be, a representation of the abyss going through what Lubre would be.
Oh, it
It's
absolutely is.
yeah,
Yeah. 100% is a representation of this whole thing.
yeah. And it's also actually a pretty interesting nod to the raid itself, because that first encounter is a you have a dark side and you have a light side, as if you have the Sapphiric sun and the Umbral sun. You have a dark and a light. You don't have, it's interesting. Um,
Yeah. And this whole struggle with Rolk and his dad, it's kind of like it's almost like what do they say when the children suffer the bad things their parents do,
mhm.
Oh, the sins of the father, that's what it is.
Which is also a weapon this season, but unrelated
Yeah.
to Rolk.
Yeah, father's sins.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Sins of the Father.
Is it sins? I thought it was father's sins.
Oh,
But
maybe
yeah,
I'm
same
wrong.
thing. Same thing.
I mean, it is
But
ultimately.
yeah, so like it's kind of like this burden that um he is holding because of daddy.
Yeah. And so he's hunting down his dad. He goes to the abyss. It's this big artificial crack in Lubre separating the desired from the undesired, a crevice devoid of all but a strand of concrete to connect the halves. And so he gets there, he finds his father, and not only his father, but he finds his mother, his sister, the survivors of his clan, and they're all saying, "Oh, we're so sorry for exiling you." And his father apologizes for everything and for the
Yeah.
furious example he set and for his inaction, and he just wants
Yeah.
everyone to be happy and comfortable, and they're all trying to make him not kill them.
Yeah.
And I don't exactly know what happens, but he says, and perhaps my tumble into the abyssal chasm is the result of my overwhelming catharsis, or perhaps it is the cost of naivety. Their faces grow smaller as I plunge deeper, but I can still make out their expressions. No longer do any of them, the adults, the children, no longer do they show regret or pain or sorrow. Their faces show relief. So instead of killing them, whether they pushed him, whether he stumbled, whether he just couldn't take it anymore and tried to end his own life, he fell backwards into the abyss, looking up at his family as he fell deeper and deeper down.
So this is where like prose and words kind of leave it up to you to decide what specifically is happening in this. Is
Interesting
this
take.
more? Yeah, yeah. So is this more like his descent into the darkness and him seeing himself no longer in control of himself, basically, and being absorbed by the witness in the darkness and his hands that were very much responsible for all of this destruction and demise are now he's kind of like he's retreating into the back of his mind, almost like a scene of you being in charge of everything and now you're just blacking out, right? And you're becoming what the witness wanted you to become. So this descent into the abyss is very representative of his descent into the new form that he is, the Rourke that we see today, the baddie bad guy.
And that's actually like cemented in the first couple lines here, where Rolk says, "I should have died," and the witness says, "And yet it was there in the darkness of the abyss that you became truly alive."
Yeah.
And so this is where the witness actually steps in the past. So in his vision, I lie amongst the swamp of and rock and ruin. The abyss is not unending after all. The wrathful sounds of unchecked nature draw close. Down here it is dark, and in the dark they thrive. I am broken. And then the witness comes in, and now you are unbroken. And Rolk
Mhm.
says, I am unbroken. I see your luster, disarming the beasts who dared to approach, their flesh melting in your presence. And the witness says, and we see yours. I rise, broken and then unbroken. What is this thing that grants life? We are opportunity, and I am ruin. And what am I meant to do? Ruin. Your voice subsides, but your luster remains. It is a familiar one, like that of our umbral sun. And
Yeah.
so this kind of seems a little odd for the witness, but they basically saved him from dying. Like I
So
know he
this is where
didn't.
So this is where I was trying to, and I'm glad that I waited because this is where I was trying to make a point. And so I guess the point, the best analogy I can use right now would be the witness saw a blade and
Mhm.
he wanted to temper that blade and make it as sharp and strong as he could possibly make it. And that is Rock. And he is going to use that blade as a weapon. He's weaponizing
Yeah.
Rock. But he saw a weapon in its generic form and thought, this is not good enough. I've got to hone this blade and make it strong so that when I wield it against my ultimate foe, it does not break or it does not, it does not cut, basically. And so Rolk is that weapon. And Rolk finds his true purpose, which was his base purpose all along, which was the sins of the father. He was
Mhm.
created out of this hatred towards, aligning with the umbral sun. He was created out of this hatred for the opposite of his people, and he now feels at home. He now feels safe back where he was as a child with this driven purpose of fuck everything. I choose to exist. Everything
Mhm.
else is annihilation.
And everything else is annihilation
Yeah.
because we're all and actually I'm going to touch on this again, but the darkness fixes his glaive was broken too, and the
Yeah.
witness fixes it. And we'll try to jump back at that at the very end. We'll just finish out this last entry. So Rourke takes his glaive and he uses it to climb up the wall. Glaive hand, glaive hand, glaive hand, just like spearing it into the wall. And he climbs back up into the city of Lubre, which is also the name of the planet. Don't be confused. And he starts slaughtering his family. And when the civilians are watching in horror, he starts slaughtering them too. And then the city starts to turn on him. They send their own defenses at him. And so Rolk is just like given into it, right?
Yeah.
They're it's killing
He's
with
full. He's full blown Rolk.
yeah, like this is what, as you said, the witness wanted. It sharpened this blade and it is now cutting through everything.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the regime, was actually siphoning light from the Saphiric sun, and that was like how
Yeah.
they got everything,
Yeah.
which doesn't sound like a good idea. And it very quickly is learned not to be a good idea because Rolk basically uses that technology against them. He it says their folly was their intended salvation, siphoning light from the Saphiric sun itself. I use your luster, turn their technology against them like a backfired pistol, and
Yeah.
that causes the sun to implode,
Yeah.
which
And
just
there it
fucking
is.
kills everybody except for him. And
Yeah.
he's staring into the abyss, and he drops his glaive, which he renamed for a second time now, or third time, to Lubre's Ruin, which you might recognize is the glaive you get from the raid. It's also his glaive that he uses against you, and except his is much bigger. I don't know why it
Yeah.
shrinks for you, but it does.
Who knows?
It's a
It's
very
more
cool
like a
looking glaive
representation.
though. And he
Yeah, it is
says,
cool. It's like the double sides of
yeah,
anyway. Yeah.
and he says, I let myself fall in, and then I am here with you, my witness. And now he's like caught up to the present day. And the witness says, and what do you feel? Devoid of family, devoid of the regime, devoid of Lubre. What do you feel here in our embrace? Now that they are gone and you are left, Rolk opens his eyes, crawls forth toward the blackened solution that engulfed him all this time, emerges from the wall of obsidian like miasma to find his luster, to find Lubre's ruin. Taking them, he rises to his feet. What do you feel, my child? Relief. So the witness, this might not be the witness's first disciple, but it's the first one that obviously it's the first one that we know because he is the first disciple that
Yeah.
we know, but like this has taken place so long ago that it's even before the hive. So
Right.
he's potentially the first disciple. And so, like I said, really quick, I wanted to squeeze this in here at the end. I think we talked about it last week about how the relic on Mars, which is an artifact of darkness, has been used to kind of like rewind time, and potentially it could be like the third energy, being like a
Yeah.
temporal power. So Rolk fell into this abyss. He should have died, and he was broken. And the witness basically just says, "And now you are unbroken." And then he looks over at his glaive, and he's like, "My glaive is broken." And the witness is like, "And now your glaive is unbroken." It really feels like they're trying to build up that the darkness has this kind of like time power, and I I don't know.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense to me.
But yeah, rereading, I'm really glad that we did this book because rereading it, learning how to read it properly, and
Helps.
yeah, this is such a good book. The raid was so great. I'm so excited about it. There was so much lore about this raid. We don't normally get
Yeah.
it like this, you know? And this is only half of what we have because next week on our next episode on the 27th, March 27th, we're going to be talking about the raid armor because each armor has its own set of lore. So that's 15 more
Can't wait
entries.
to dive into that. That's gonna be
Yeah.
fun.
And then after the raid armor, you also have the Imperious Sun Shell, and the collective obligation lore entries.
Yep.
If you're looking for the reading order of all of this, you start with Shattered Sun, and then you move on to the Hunter armor set, going from helmet, gloves, chest piece, boots, class item, just like it is on your character. And then, so Hunter, Titan, Warlock, Ghost Shell, Collective Obligation. That is the chronological in order reading, if you
Nice.
can't wait. Because that's going to be
Nice.
it for us this week.
Yeah. That was a
I,
great one though.
Yeah, no, I was really excited for this one. Like when I was making writing up these notes, I was just like, okay, this needs to be 2 episodes. There's too much here. I thought I can't believe for half a second I thought that we were actually going to be able to squeeze it all in one.
Well, there we are. We did
So
it.
we did it. Uh, Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. If you came in late, etc., blah blah blah, you want to find out more about us, you can go to @Loose Canon Show on Twitter. The show will be put out in an audio format, uploaded onto YouTube shortly later today. It'll I mean that's basically it. You know the gist by now. Well, not exactly 2 episodes. Someone just said 2 episodes in chat. We're not doing back to back episodes. We're doing another episode in 2 weeks, just like
Yeah.
normal. It's still only one episode, so sorry about that. But we will be
There we are.
continuing this awesome Rolk talk, and holy shit, like not just Rolk, but the worm gods are gonna be touched in here. Like that's a big one for me. That's a big holy shit for me.
Big stuff.
Yeah. All right. That's it for us. Bye, everybody.
Bye.